National Football League Playoff Pulse, The Road to Glory. Transmitter 42. Dylan Huggins joins us once again to perform an autopsy on his playoff predictions from episode 12 of this podcast, to reveal his analysis on the Chiefs and Eagles and provide his predictions for the big game. A 5-year veteran of college football, Dylan brings his experience as offensive lineman to bear on today's professional American football. Let's welcome back Dylan Huggins to discuss the playoff results and the Super Bowl matchup that, perhaps, no one wanted. Well, welcome back, Dylan.
Thanks for having me again. Excited to be here, as usual.
So, you gave me the title of The Road to Glory. Let's go ahead and introduce yourself.
So, those of you, I've been on here. This is my second time on the podcast now. As mentioned in the opening intro, 5-year member of a Division III football team. Been around the game for a long time. Started playing the game at a very young age. And today, I want to dissect the end results of the playoff brackets up until this point in the National Football League. Those of you that recall that may have listened to my previous time on this podcast, I did make my predictions prior to the playoffs unfolding. So I'm going to dive deep and see where I went wrong, because there were some critical errors, obviously, in this bracket. But that's the beauty of it. I mean, there's always seems to be a Cinderella team, an underdog team that wins a couple games that, no one really thought they had a chance in. So it's been a fun...
Like Washington, perhaps?
You got that right. And we're going to be talking a lot about Washington later and their very bright future ahead. So, yeah, I'm very excited to take a dive and see where the wrongs happened, see where any correct picks happened, and excited to dissect the big Super Bowl game, which will be a good one.
Cool. Well, my background, of course, is I grew up in the Virginia area. I was a Redskins fan. My father was a Redskins fan. He moved into the area right after World War II. And so they all of their friends in the neighborhood would get together and watch the games on first a black and white TV. Then my parents had the only color TV, the first color TV. So they would all come to their house to watch the games. That was back in the day. And that's how I became a Washington fan, even though things have changed a little bit with the name and all, but I was quite pleased to see the Commanders do what they did. Looks like their new coaches got some things to showcase.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there was a lot of questions going into the year about Washington with the new coach, and Dan Snyder now being, I want to say, 2 years removed from ownership, which everyone's silently rejoicing in the background, I would assume. Not a lot of success under the Snyder era. So, yeah.
Most of the ardent Skins fans do remember Jack Kent Cooke fondly. As a guy who seemed to care and got things done. Joe Gibbs, the other key people. So, current status of the NFL playoffs.
Right. So, we're 99% done here. We have made it to the big game. And first I'm going to talk about the matchups that I previously made, or the predictions that I previously made in the first round of the playoffs, and what went right and what went wrong. So the first round was a little anticlimactic, I would say. There were a good amount of blowouts, which no one wants unless you're a team of said team that is winning. But there were definitely some shocks as well. I think the biggest shock in America was the LA Chargers crumbling immensely to the Houston Texans, which I predicted the Chargers would win this game. Not necessarily by a lot, but I thought the Chargers would find a way. And it was just a lackluster performance all around, specifically on offense. Chargers quarterback Justin Herbert turned the ball over. It was almost like he was like owning a bakery. He was like selling so many turnovers. It was ridiculous. And it's definitely the worst game Justin Herbert's played in his career, which is unfortunate because you can't have a game like that in these games that matter. But the Houston Texans really, they came to play, man. They defensively, they just shut down. Like they completely stifled and took they took everything away that the Chargers were trying to throw at them offensively. They completely annihilated their offense, specifically like getting pressure on Justin Herbert, which they have gotten pressure on all year. And that secondary played very well in this game. And yeah, the Texans flew, I guess, including myself, Texans flew under the radar a little bit because worst division in football, records-wise. No one else in that division really competes or is in a good situation right now, especially in the future. But Texans won the division and made a little noise in the playoffs, and still got a young quarterback, got young guys. They got a good head coach, like they should be.
I was going to ask, is the coach fresh? A new guy?
Yeah, it's a second year. He's D'Amico Ryans. He was the ex-defensive coordinator for the San Francisco 49ers. So he's younger. He's now finished his second year. Now he has 2 seasons under his belt, like got the head coaching gig, which that's how it works. If you're a good coordinator and you're a young coordinator, you're going to be getting head coaching interviews. So that's why you see like a lot of these younger coordinators leave, because like they're chasing the opportunity to get the head coach position on a team. So
it would be another episode, but I've always wondered, what does it take to become a head coach in the NFL? And of course, that's a lot of details that probably too much for this review of the playoffs, but something to keep in mind.
Yeah, we could definitely do another episode on something like that. I mean, it's not an easy road at all. I mean, some guys are talented enough where they can show that they can make an immediate impact, but some guys it just takes a lot longer. You got to learn more, comes with experience.
Take us to another game.
Yeah, so the second wild card game is the Baltimore Ravens and the Pittsburgh Steelers.
That was not really a hard guess, was it?
In my opinion, no. And
they made it a game for a while.
Well, you would think, looking at the scoreboard, and it was 28-14 was the final, and I don't really think that the score reflected like the dominance of the game necessarily. I mean, there's a lot of times where like scores look closer than they are, and there's times where scores are more lopsided than they actually are, just because like the way the game's played, like for that specific game. Like for example, like if say a team wins by like 3 scores, but they get 2 touchdowns or something like that in the last 4 to 5 minutes of the game, like it looks a lot worse on paper than it actually is because it's more hard fought. But the Baltimore jumped out very quickly in the first half, got a lead. And in the second half, they didn't really have to do anything like unorthodox. They pretty much just relied on the run game with Derrick Henry, it's worked all year for him. And they didn't have to do anything fancy in the second half. And for the Steelers to win, they need, at this stage that their team is right now, they have to have a game that is low scoring. And if it gets out of hand early, or if there's a lead that they have to try to surpass or overcome, that's going to be very difficult for them to do, and it proved true in this game. The next one was the Buffalo-Denver matchup. Now, I picked Buffalo in this one, but I was completely incorrect where I said that I thought this was going to be the game that was a lot closer than people thought or initially perceived. The game was a thorough domination by the Buffalo Bills. I mean, just in all phases of the game. Buffalo moved the ball. Buffalo moved the ball against that very elite Broncos defense. Josh Allen and company didn't really have any issues throughout that game. Maybe a little slow in the beginning, but they picked it up. And 31-7 was the final, I believe. And it was Denver just doesn't have enough firepower on offense to match what the Bills can put up points-wise. So we're completely wrong about the prediction of that being the, sneakily competitive game. And I mean, like I said, the biggest shock so far was that Houston and Chargers game because it was very lopsided. Moving to the National Football Conference, the NFC side of the wild card round, some would say another shocker. Not because necessarily of the outcome, but in the way it happened was the Los Angeles Rams just dominating the 14-3 Minnesota Vikings. Now, everyone knew that. I think a lot of people picked Minnesota, but the people that picked Minnesota, I was one of them, thought that it was going to be, it wasn't going to be an easy game because the Rams have a lot of good young defensive talent, and you have Matthew Stafford at quarterback, who's the best quarterback in the NFC side of the NFL, and yeah, the Rams defensive line won them this game simply because I think they sacked Minnesota quarterback Sam Darnold. I think it was 9 times. It was ridiculous. Like,
wow.
Now a lot of those sacks weren't on the O-line. Sam Darnold kind of turned into a pumpkin in this game.
Well, what do you mean by that?
Turned into a pumpkin?
Yes.
Just choke gag. Sam Darnold was drafted, I want to say 2017 or 18, and didn't have a lot of success.
What position are we talking about here?
Quarterback.
Oh, okay.
For the Vikings. And didn't have a lot of success in his early stages of his career. Played very well this year with a good supporting cast around him, good players, top 3 receiver in the NFL, and Justin Jefferson, one of the best play calling head coaches, and Kevin O'Connell. And there's going to be a lot of questions raised about the Vikings going forward because they're going to have to make a decision on whether they want to give out a big contract to Sam Darnold this offseason. And the reason that's tough is because it's not like they don't have another option, because they did draft a rookie quarterback in this past draft class, J.J. McCarthy out of Michigan. But he was out for the year, had I think towards meniscus. It was something with his knee, but he was out. So there's going to be some decisions to be made in the Minnesota front office on whether you're going to pay Sam Darnold, who last 2 games of the season, one being this playoff game against the Rams, and then the other important game, both the last week of the season against the Detroit Lions, which was playing for the division title, and another lackluster performance from Darnold at quarterback. So he's looked good all year. But in the big moment games, where you need him, nowhere close to getting it done. So it's going to be, it is a small sample size. It's just 2 games. But, you have to think about, we have 2 games now looking at him and playing this poorly against games we have to win if you're Minnesota. So, yeah, there's going to be a lot of talk this offseason of what they're going to do. So,
okay.
And then your Washington boys, man, what a run. I did pick Tampa Bay in this game, but I thought it was going to be, like I said, in the first round, and I actually think I was correct. I thought this was going to be the best game of the first round, and it was. It was
tight, wasn't it?
It was 23-20. It took a Washington game-winning doink field goal to win it.
That's right.
So,
doinked into between the uprights.
And I don't think the rough one about this for Tampa Bay was they very easily could have won this game. There was a late Tampa quarterback, Baker Mayfield. There was a miscommunication on the handoff, whether he was going to hand the ball off to the running back or pull it. The read option play where he has to either read the defense to give it to the running back or pull it potentially for a pass. And they botched the exchange, and Washington was right there to pick it up with very nice field position and put them in a great spot right there. And rookie quarterback Jaden Daniels for Washington, man, he's the truth that Washington fans have been searching for, and they haven't had luck with quarterbacks. If you go back to RG3, that was the last time, Washington fans thought this is going to be our franchise quarterback, our quarterback of the future. And then we all know the injuries with him. It was brutal. It was just unlucky. But Jaden Daniels has done something that a lot of quarterbacks haven't done in the league today, even some of the elite ones, and that's win back-to-back playoff games. And I'll talk a little bit about their deeper run at the playoffs later. But yeah, got the job done. Thriller of a game against Tampa Bay. Great, best game of the first round by far.
Okay.
And then the last matchup, my pride and joy Green Bay Packers could not get it done, which I didn't expect us to get it done, against the Philadelphia Eagles, who the Philadelphia Eagles were my Super Bowl pick. So this game was weird. We got in a hole early against them. We fumbled the kickoff. And there's like, whatever you want to say, like there's controversial, like he recovered the ball or while being down by contact, like he was down, like the Packers returner recovered it or didn't. They ruled that he didn't. Gave the Philadelphia Eagles like the ball like the 25-yard line on on the Packers' own 25-yard line, and they went up 7 like very early. So I was just thinking, okay, this is gonna be a rough day, the way it was starting. But I mean, final was 22-10, and I mean what won the game? There's a couple things. The Philadelphia Eagles defense is just, it's the best unit in the NFL. I mean, Packers couldn't primarily, they ran the ball okay against them. It took a long time for them to bust a couple runs. Josh Jacobs played his heart out, but like they couldn't get the passing game going at all. So that's where that game was won. And the Packers defense played very well. I mean, they gave up the 7 points early, but that wasn't on the defense because the Eagles got the ball at the 20-yard line because of that fumble or the first play of the game. And then other than that, they held the Eagles to, if you take away that early score, which was a turnover, really only gave up 15 points. And I mean, they held them to field goals like throughout the game. The Eagles had another touchdown in the game, but they were holding Philly. Like they were bending but not breaking. They were giving up field goals. And I mean, they played well enough for to give the Packers a chance, and the Packers just couldn't capitalize with it. I mean, they couldn't move the ball on them, and yeah, I mean, the Eagles defense was the driving force of that victory for them. Also, Packers had a plethora of injuries throughout that game, and it wasn't like guys that third in the rotation people. It was like key starters, and I mean, there was just no winning that game for the Packers. All right, so, and then moving back to the American Football Conference, the divisional round, the first round bye, Kansas City Chiefs, back-to-back defending Super Bowl champions, hosted the Houston Texans. Now, the Houston Texans, actually played very well in this game, in my opinion. They had a significantly amount more yards offensively than the Chiefs did, but they couldn't punch it in, they couldn't capitalize. I mean, the Texans' defense still played a great game, but we've seen this story with the Chiefs. It doesn't have to be a dominant victory. It doesn't have to be in dominant fashion. They find a way. And this game was a little weird because there was a lot of controversial with this game with penalties, especially. Now, do I think it was necessarily the sole reason the Texans lost this game? No, I don't, because Texans were not able to score enough. They couldn't be efficient enough on offense. But there was a lot of opportunities. There was a lot of extra opportunities given to the Chiefs. It was a really bad. They called the Texans for roughing the passer when Patrick Mahomes, the Chiefs quarterback Patrick Mahomes, rolled out, slid late, and there's 2 Texans defenders coming in at opposite sides, and obviously it's tough for the defenders in any scenario in this instance because you can't just stop if you're launched. If you're in midair, you're not gonna be able to stop. And they didn't even hit the quarterback. They literally just hit each other. The Texans players just hit each other, and then they called it. I mean, it's ridiculous. And it's at that.
You're not saying possibly home cooking, are you?
It's it's horrible calls, but don't think it was the reason they won, because they still played a complete game outside of said penalties. I mean, with a game as lopsided as officiating in terms of penalty yards, it's dude, you can make the argument. It's the Chiefs are the most disciplined team. But it's you can't, there can't be that lopsided of penalty yards in a playoff game. But they were still the better team. They still deserve to win. The Chiefs' defense, I mean, is, like I said, the Eagles' defense is the best. I think the Chiefs is the second best. So the
Babylon Bee headline, satire people. Chiefs accused of rigging games by playing better than the other teams.
Yeah, I mean, if people can say what they want, I mean, I don't believe it's necessarily a conspiracy or anything like that. But it's stuff like that makes people wonder is all.
Right.
So Chiefs advance, and Patrick Mahomes, quarterback of the Chiefs, as a starting quarterback, he's always made it to the AFC Championship game. He's never not played in it, which is pretty crazy.
How long has he been in the NFL?
Oh, his rookie year, or his first year starting was 2018, and you know who he lost to?
No.
Tom Brady.
No.
Tom Brady's one of two people to ever beat him in the playoffs. So Tom Brady's actually beaten him when he was with New England, and then Tom Brady beat him in the Super Bowl when he was with Tampa Bay. So because the Chiefs played Tampa Bay in the COVID Super Bowl year. Moving on to Baltimore Buffalo. This game was very good. It was very good. Baltimore was a road favorite in this game. This was a weird game because Baltimore turned the ball over and had too many mistakes in the first half, and they were in hole early. It was 21-10 at half, and I mean, a lot of narratives are flying around right now about Lamar Jackson, quarterback of the Ravens, because he seems to be a playoff shrinker. And what I mean by that is he is amazing in the regular season, but in the games that he loses in the playoffs, there's instances where like when a team loses in the playoffs, it's like the starting quarterback like still put his best foot forward. Like he did all he could and played an amazing game, but like at the end of the day, he couldn't get it done. I mean, we haven't really seen that from Lamar Jackson. Like just rewinding time a couple of years, like last year against the Kansas City Chiefs at home, AFC Championship, put up 10 points. I mean, that's playoff shrinking. Like, and then this year, not even all that. There's been many times where the Ravens have been favorites in these games, and the offense just becomes stagnant, whether it be turnovers or whatever it may be. And that's what happened in this game. In the first half, like Lamar Jackson had two pretty bad turnovers in this game. He threw a horrible interception, and he fumbled a ball as well, which the Bills returned pretty far. They had a pretty good return out of it and got a lot of yards. So it was a 10-point swing. They got a touchdown out of it. The Bills got a touchdown out of it and a field goal. So that's a 10-point swing right there just because of turnovers. And the Bills took care of the ball. The game was still tight at the end because Lamar Jackson actually, like the Ravens played great in the second half. The Ravens defense really played well. And the Ravens defense deserves no fault for this loss because in the first half, the Bills put up 21 in the first half, but it's hard to blame them when your offense and your team is, turning the ball over and making key mistakes, putting you in a bad spot. So the Ravens, and like in the second half, like the Ravens got the running game going with Derrick Henry, and like they clawed their way back into it. It was another bad turnover. It was a bad turnover in the second half, though, from the tight end Mark Andrews. Just fumbled the ball, like got punched out, gave the Bills the ball back, and they had momentum, and then they just like lost it. And then Ravens' last drive of the game, drove all the way down the field with pretty relative ease. They were just moving the ball. It's crunch time. It was less than 3 minutes, and they had to go like 80 some yards, and they scored a touchdown and pulled it within 2, but they needed a 2-point conversion to win the game. And Lamar Jackson was flawless on that drive to give his team a chance. And then Mark Andrews again deserves a lot of blame for this loss because of his fumble, and then he dropped an easy catch on the 2-point conversion. So you can't blame everything on the quarterback, on Lamar Jackson, for this loss. I would say you could give equal blame to quarterback and the tight end just because of the turnovers and key mistakes. Like Lamar Jackson played great in the second half, but if he doesn't dig his team into a hole in the first half, then they probably win the game. So, yeah. And then Bills Josh Allen didn't really have to do anything. Like, they were pretty conservative for the majority of the game. And then second half got a little shaky. Like, they weren't moving the ball as well, kicked field goals instead of getting touchdowns. And then that's why the game was, the game was very close at the end. And it was, Ravens very easily, probably should have won that game, but it's just mistakes and the turnovers that cost it. And then Buffalo advanced, playing against the Chiefs again. And I'll come back to that matchup because that was a pretty big one. All right. And then Detroit, number 1 seed, first round bye, playing against your pride and joy, Washington. And this was the shocker of, this is probably the shocker of the entire playoffs, just because.
Should have been closer than it was, wouldn't it?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, Washington, outside the first quarter, midway through the first quarter, Washington controlled this football game from that point till the end. Detroit had no answer. A lot of things went wrong for Detroit in this game. They turned the ball over 5 times. I mean, Jared Goff threw 3 picks. He fumbled, got stripped. They threw another interception on a trick play. It was just, and the crazy thing is they put up with five turnovers, they still put up over 30 points. I mean, that tells you how good their offense is and how they can overcome stuff like that. But it's hard to overcome 5 turnovers, and then your defense is just getting absolutely annihilated by. I mean, Washington's offense did whatever they wanted. They got 7 points from a Jared Goff pick 6. Lions quarterback threw a pick 6. And Jaden Daniels and company were just able to do whatever they wanted. And I think most people in America picked the Lions in this game. I mean, just because of how they've looked all year. But there was a growing concern about all the key injuries that the Lions had on the defensive side of the ball, which they lost a lot of people on the defensive side of the ball, but it was masked by, the deficiencies in the defense were masked by just how powerful the offense was. And I mean, there was a game against the Houston Texans. Lions played the Texans earlier in the season. Jared Goff threw 5 interceptions for the Lions, but they still won they found a way to win the game. So people are it's the track record shows that they, even with bad offensive performances with terms of turnovers and stuff like that, they can still overcome. But their defense has not played that bad all season. Now they did have like I said, they lost a lot of starters, but the week and 2 weeks prior when they played the Minnesota Vikings, the defense completely shut down Minnesota's offense in that game that I mentioned earlier for the division title. So there was reason for hope for them because with the deficiencies on defense, it didn't seem that big of a problem really, but they completely got exposed against Washington. And with those turnovers, Washington capitalized on everyone. And it wasn't 3. It wasn't field goals. It was touchdowns. And Washington put up over 40. I mean, 7 of it was a pick 6, I believe, but still, Washington won by 2 scores, I believe, in the end. Doesn't really, that doesn't even, like I mentioned earlier, how certain scores don't necessarily tell the whole story. The score actually looks closer than it was. It was a thorough domination. It was Dan Quinn, for the head coach of Washington, had a great game plan. They executed perfectly. And with the turnovers, I mean, that's what a lot of times in playoff football, it's what it comes down to, is what teams are going to make mistakes and if you can capitalize on it or not.
I did feel sorry for the Detroit fans because they've had moments where they've almost made it. It's always never been anything more than that. Almost made it.
Yeah, I mean, that's a fan base that's been through it all. Like,
except for winning the Super Bowl, or
except
even
for
getting
even
to the
making,
Super Bowl.
yeah, I was about to say, except for even making it there, and they're going to be in a rough spot now because they have a decent amount of money available to pay players, but they have some big contracts on their roster. I mean, the biggest contract is their quarterback, who, like I mentioned earlier, turned into a pumpkin when it mattered. So, and he's the highest paid player on the team. So, I mean, they've lost a lot of their coaching staff now because the Lions have been so good. These coaches that are working under head coach Dan Campbell, the offensive coordinator Ben Johnson just took the head coaching position in Chicago. And then defensive coordinator Aaron Glenn just took the head coaching position for the New York Jets. So they're losing both coordinators. They lost their O-line coach. They lost their D-line coach and they went for those two are taking like more of a important role now. They're both going to be offensive coordinators and defensive coordinators now. So yeah, they're losing a lot of coaching, and the offseason, like, it's going to be like, how are they going to address it? Like, and how is the offense going to look? Is the offense going to look the same with a different play caller? Because, I mean, their play caller was probably he's probably a top 4 play caller in the league, and he deserves his opportunity as a head coach, rightfully so. So how are they going to, how's the team going to look going forward with a new play caller? It's new shoes to fill. So I don't think it's going to be the same. I don't think it's going to be what we've seen these last 2 seasons out of Detroit, is this overwhelming offense that no one can really contain. But yeah, the Washington, man, back in the conference championship. It's been a while, and Washington fans are all about it. I mean, for every reason to be. It's the best season they've had in years. So,
and a fresh coach. That's kind of amazing.
Fresh coach. And I saw something about Dan Snyder's not loving it. There's a little jealousy there, because in his tenure, it's like, what did they do during his tenure? Yeah. So, and then moving on to, so Washington back in the conference championship. It's the fans have suffered through enough through the Snyder era where it's a refreshing sight, and yeah, so pretty exciting to have him in there. And then Philadelphia Eagles played the Los Angeles Rams. I didn't have this matchup because I had the Rams losing to Minnesota, which obviously was a big fiasco in itself. But this game was very good. I mean, it was remarkable. It was like everything you want in a playoff football game. You got 2 good teams battling it out. Great plays made on both sides. You got a snow game. Blizzard started like at halftime. Started snowing a little bit before, but then it really started coming down. So it was very fun. It was a very fun football game to watch, and that game was back and forth, man. And the Rams had a great game plan going into this game. They played very well, and they had an opportunity at the end to win the game. And because they drove down the field in the snow, throwing the ball with Stafford, amazingly in the snow, like moving down the field in crunch time with like under a minute left, and they took a really bad sack on a 3rd down play, which pretty much sealed the game because it made them getting to the first down. I can't remember if it was if they needed to get a first down or if they needed to get a touchdown. I don't remember if it was like they needed to get to the touchdown marker or not, but it was, if they needed the first down, it was pretty much like right near the goal line. So it was like you kind of just need the touchdown anyway. But yeah, they moved the ball down on that 2-minute drive with ease. I mean, like they were moving down, like they were feeling confident. Stafford was throwing the ball well in the snow, threw a great deep ball down the sideline. And then they just took a bad sack. I mean, it wasn't really on Stafford. Right guard just lost his rep. And I mean, the Eagles defense is just, it's a lot to handle on all aspects. The defensive line and linebackers, the DBs, defensive backs. Like it's.
Who's the defense coach for Eagles?
Vic Fangio.
How long has he been there? Do you know?
There, I want to say it's his first year there.
Really?
But wait, not.
Okay.
I might be wrong. I might be completely wrong.
That's all right.
So, I mean, the Rams really had a chance there at the end, moving the ball very well, but right guard just had a bad rep, and I believe it was Jalen Carter, the defensive tackle for the Eagles, who, I mean, made a great play. I mean, he's tremendous. Like, he's that whole D line, defensive line it's a very complete unit all around, and Steve Spagnuolo has done a very good job of coaching them up. Although one may argue it's like not super hard just because of all the talent they have and how they've hit on their 2 rookie draft picks who are starting for them on the defense. So, and when it came down to it, they made a play, and people say defense wins championships, and that's what won it right there for them in the end, and crunch time when it mattered. But yeah, so Eagles moved on. Eagles moved on to the NFC Championship game. All right, I'm actually going to start with the NFC Championship game first, and we had a divisional match. We had a divisional matchup, Washington, and going on the road to Philly. And unfortunately, the dandelions and roses of their playoff run came to an end against, unfortunately for them, just the superior team. They beat the Eagles once this year. It took a lot with Eagles had a backup quarterback in, but in this game, there was just. Felt like they're watching this game. The Washington got the ball first and went 18 plays on the first drive just to kick a field goal.
Mm-hmm.
And then Eagles get the ball, score on the first play. So I was like, okay, is it going to get
one of those games? Yeah.
I mean, it was just too much for Washington. If Washington was going to have a chance in that game, they were going to have to outscore. They were just going to have to put up a bunch of points because their defense is not good enough to stop the running attack that the Eagles have, which Eagles have best offensive line. You got the best running back in the NFL, rushed for over 2,000 yards this season. It's going to be hard to stop that. And I mean, if you can run the ball well, you can pass the ball well. That's how that works in the NFL. The run game opens up the pass game. And while the Eagles didn't have to pass super much, like a whole lot, they were very efficient with it, because when you can run the ball well and you're running the ball very efficiently, the opposing defense is going to start creeping up every time, just because like they're going to think, oh, we have to stop the run. Like they're gashing us, and that's when you just like hit it over, like the linebackers who are creeping up, and there's just like space opens in the field. Like I said, it opens up the pass, and that's what they did. They were efficient. The Eagles were efficient, running and passing. Scored at will. It was rough. It was a rough watch, but it was also, Washington fans shouldn't really feel that bad just because they're ahead of schedule in their quote unquote rebuild. You know, they first conference championship appearance since I want to say the 90s, maybe. It's been a while. I mean, and you did it with a rookie quarterback. You did it with a first-year head coach, and you did it with a rookie quarterback. I mean, it's it was a great year for them, and they should have nothing to be ashamed of. It did. The game got out of hand, but it was just it wasn't a good matchup for them, just like personnel wise. Now I'm sure Washington will have to address some things in the draft, specifically on defense. Defense does need to improve, especially stopping the run, but they've got a good foundation right now, and they're ahead of schedule, so they have a bright future ahead. And so I successfully picked the Philadelphia Eagles to make it to the Super Bowl. Did not have them playing Washington, but I got the pick right. So, and then we go to the other side, which was a game of the playoffs, probably. I mean, there was so many narratives floating around about the Buffalo Bills and the Chiefs playing yet again. Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen playing again in the playoffs. And the Chiefs won. Josh Allen's now 0-4 against Patrick Mahomes in his playoff career. And I mean, the game was very good. It was a thriller. And there's going to be a lot of narratives floating around about this game, about Josh Allen for the Bills. And he can't get it done, blah blah blah. Like, you can't beat Patrick Mahomes. No one really can, unfortunately. I mean, it was like the Chiefs just find a way. I mean, and unlike a certain other quarterback in Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, when he loses these types of playoff games, puts his best foot forward. I didn't think he played a perfect game. He played good enough to win. I mean, the Bills, I think where the game was decided was, I just think, coaching. I mean, coaching, like, definitely. I mean, like, the Chiefs have a great 1-2 punch on the staff, and Andy Reid, head coach, making the play calls. He's been around for a long time. Head coaching, didn't necessarily have the success that he has now when he was in Philadelphia, but found a new home, and they've been a juggernaut. Like, they've drafted so well, and play calling, like, the play calling is insane considering.
Does he call the offense?
Yes, he does. I mean, there's a lot of, like, anytime there's like an offense, Andy Reid's like comes from an offensive background. Like, usually, if you're the head coach and you're like from the offensive background, you're usually the play caller. Like, for example, the Packers head coach is offensive. He's an offensive background. Matt LaFleur. He calls the plays. Not all head coaches are like that. All offensive coaches are like that. I mean, like the Lions head coach is still an offensive background, but he doesn't do the play calling. That's their offensive coordinator, Ben Johnson. So it just depends on level of confidence in your system that you want to run, your offensive system that you want to run, or not. But yeah, usually the case is now if the head coach is offensive oriented, they're calling the plays.
Okay.
Which means like the offensive coordinator for said team they do have an important role, but it's like, it's not as involved. So, yeah, and then I think I mentioned earlier, Chiefs defensive coordinator Steve Spagnuolo.
Spagnuolo.
Yeah, Steve Spagnuolo. Yeah, the defense is insane. Much like, it's more impressive than the Eagles' defense in the sense that there's less talent on the defensive roster than what the Eagles have. The Eagles have a good defensive play caller combined with like stars, like just stars, like it's a star-studded roster. Now the Chiefs do have stars on the defense, like they have a future Hall of Famer at D tackle, and like they have good players, like George Karlaftis, defensive end, and Trent McDuffie at corner. Like they do have good players, but it's more, the coaching is more impressive for the Chiefs defense than it is for the Eagles defense, simply because if you can be dominant with less talent, that's more impressive than dominant with, a star-studded supporting cast that you're working with. So, yeah, and what drove me crazy watching this game was every time there was a short yardage situation where the Bills were on offense and they needed to get, yard, 2 yards, whatever it was, fourth down, third down, like short yardage situations, they ran the same stupid quarterback sneak where Josh Allen takes the ball and he's just picking a gap. He's not getting any push from behind him to push him forward, which is why the Eagles are so good at the quarterback sneak, because they kind of just there's a lot of controversy about, it's called the tush push. I don't know if you've heard of it, but Eagles have been running it for a couple of years, and it's literally just all the offensive linemen just get in a 4-point stance, and just lean forward, and they all pretty much just dive forward. And then Jalen Hurts, the quarterback, takes the snap, and he's got 2 guys behind him just pushing him over a pile, and it works every time. It's kind of a cheat code. But I mean, when you have the best offensive line, and there's so much controversial about that play, because half the time they run it illegally because they're offsides all the time. And the refs just don't call it for some reason. But if that's allowed, then you would think every team should just do it, but they don't. I don't know. And Josh Allen, these sneak situations, was just trying to pretty much do it all himself. Just pick a gap and try to rely on your offensive line, which a lot of people thought that the Bills' offensive line was this elite unit. They're not really that great. They're an average offensive line unit. They have a good left tackle, they have a good right tackle, but it's not this elite unit that some people like to say that they are. And they actually ran the ball pretty well in the game, but they got out physicaled. The line play, especially in the second half, it looked pretty. I came away thinking that the Chiefs defensive line just wanted it more, and they were more physical than the Bills offensive line. And it looked like this was going to be finally the time that Josh Allen would beat Chiefs and Patrick Mahomes in the playoffs, because Chiefs turned the ball over, which they don't usually do. Turned the ball over once. Patrick Mahomes fumbled, and they still didn't win. Josh Allen didn't play a perfect game. Played good enough to win. He didn't turn the ball over. And I mean, on the last drive of the game, well, not the last drive of the game, but the last Bills drive of the game, they went 17 yards, and they were down 3, and they needed at least a field goal at the bare minimum to stay alive or potentially win with a touchdown. And this is where coaching comes into it again. It was 3rd and 10, and it's less than 2 minutes left in the game. It's this is crunch time. You gotta throw the ball down the field. You gotta get in position to give your team a chance. And they threw a screen pass on 3rd and 10, which I'm assuming was to, I think they went into that play call thinking that we have 2 downs anyway, because they were gonna go for it on 4th down regardless if they didn't get it on 3rd and 10. But you gotta if you have Josh Allen at quarterback, you gotta give him a chance. You gotta let him throw the ball down the field. Don't throw a screen pass for 5 yards. And then the last play of their drive, it was 4th and 5. Gotta have it, possession. Gotta convert, pretty much.
Did they run or pass?
They passed, and that's where Steve Spagnuolo dialed up his best blitz, and he saved it for that moment. It's he's very good at Spagnuolo's very good of saving his best tricks for crucial moments. And they brought more pressure off if Josh Allen's facing this way, his right, they brought pressure off his right. They brought the corner blitz as well. And like he had like no time at all like to throw. It was like 1.5 seconds. Pressure was in his face, and like he gave his team a chance. Like he's falling away. Like pressure's immediately in his face. Doesn't really have a chance at a clean throw. Falls back, and like throws up accurate ball to his tight end, and it was catchable. Not an easy catch, but it was catchable. I mean, like he gave him a chance. I mean, it was a crazy throw under the circumstances. Like he's got 3 guys running after him. He's falling backwards. Like it's like a prayer, but like it was an accurate pass, and it's like it was an amazing throw. But at the end, it didn't matter because he dropped it. And like, you can't put the loss on the tight end because I mean there was a lot of other things that played an effect in that game. But I'm also gonna I watch, so a little side note here, like I watch a lot of like sports shows, like quote unquote analysts, even though like a lot of them are like don't know what they're talking about. There's a guy on the show, First Things First. His name is Nick Wright, like biggest Chiefs fan in the world. Like he's annoying about it, and like he hates like the Bills and Josh Allen. He's like he has no idea what he's talking about because like I've played offensive line, like I know how like the calls work because like they're different for every team, but they still like the generalizing, like they're same, like similar, same concepts. And he's like, oh, it was Josh Allen's fault. He told the line to slide left, which means like the line just blocks the gap to their left. Like they slide and like pass protect when they're pass blocking, they just block whatever shows in their gap to their left. And he has no idea what he's talking about because the line just didn't slide left. Like the right tackle was, he went right. So it's like he has no idea what he's talking about when it comes down to like offensive line play or dissecting a football game. He doesn't know what he's talking about. So that's what infuriates me a little bit is like a lot of these people just like have no clue what they're saying. So, but yeah, the Chiefs found a way when they got the ball back. I don't think anybody in America really thought they weren't going to get a first down and seal it.
Yep.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, Chiefs advance. I had Buffalo winning this game because I thought it was their time. And it's another one of those games where like it could have gone either way. Not all four. 3 out of 4 of those Chiefs-Bills matchups could have gone either way. And I mean, it's frustrating for Bills fans because you've done this. Like you've been to 4 straight Super Bowls. You're 0-4. You couldn't beat Patrick Mahomes in the playoffs. You're 0-4 against Patrick Mahomes. And yeah, it's just, it's a rough, you talk about Lions fans being miserable. That is a fan base that is miserable. It's rough, and I get it. But yeah.
Looking ahead.
Yeah, so
Super Bowl predictions.
Super Bowl prediction here. I got 1 of 2 picks correct. I had the Philadelphia Eagles playing the Bills. Now it is the Chiefs. And I think it's going to be an amazing game. Now, a lot of people don't... there's not a lot of people outside of fan bases of either of these teams that like these teams. So... But I love football, so like I'm always here for like whoever's playing. Like I just want to see a good game. I'm sticking with my Super Bowl pick. Mainly because I just don't... And I could very well be wrong. Like, I think this game's going to be neck and neck the entire way. I don't think there's going to be a team that comes out dominant and just like gains a firm lead. But I got the Philadelphia Eagles beating the Chiefs, potentially ending the three-peat attempt of the Kansas City Chiefs. Score prediction: I think the last time these two teams met in the Super Bowl 2 years ago, and that was a great game. The Chiefs won. Very high-scoring affair. But I think this time it's going to be not a polar opposite, but it's going to be like it's going to be low scoring. I could see like a 24-20 Eagles pull it out. I think it'll be a lot lower scoring than 2 years ago. Both defenses are a lot better now. And I don't think the offenses are quite as good as the last 2 years ago when they met in the playoffs. So
I'm excited to see the number 1 defense go up against Mahomes.
Yeah. I mean, That's the caveat. I mean, like, the Bills' defense is, like, not that great. I mean, now he's going to go up against what I believe to be the best defensive unit in football all around. We will see how it plays out. I mean, we've seen, like, Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs, like, credit to them, notorious for pulling stuff out of their ass. So it's like they can get it done.
I'm going with the Eagles as well, partly because even though we all hate each other in this conference, I do kind of stick by the conference NFC East. I reminisce the days when the Cardinals were in it too with 5 teams. But I have done that before. I remember when the Cowboys beat the Bills twice in a row at the Super Bowl, and then the Redskins for the third time. The NFC East really dominated way back then. And I'll go with the Eagles. I think the Eagles will put a good test on Kansas City.
Absolutely. Last thing, my last prediction I'll make, Super Bowl, got the Eagles winning. Super Bowl MVP is going to be Saquon Barkley, Philadelphia Eagles running back. No one's been able to stop him all year. So I think he'll get over 100 yards and probably 2 touchdowns. I think it's a big day for him.
24-20 is what you said?
24-20.
24-20. I don't know what score to predict, really. I do believe it'll be lower scoring. I think the defenses are going to shine more so than they usually do. So it'll be good. Well, thank you, Dylan. This has been a great recap of the season, the playoffs, and I look forward to watching the game with you.
Absolutely. Can't wait for it.
I hope you enjoyed Transmitter 42 podcasts as much as we enjoy making them. Living a healthy life has been our primary and initial focus, but we have 2 tech topics and just started sports coverage. I did receive a comment after the first sports broadcast suggesting that while society is on fire, covering something like the NFL playoffs seemed a bit out of touch. I don't disagree that there are problems afoot, but we must take time to enjoy life where possible or we all risk going insane. We certainly plan on covering many societal relevant topics in the future with brand new guests, topics, and commentary. All the while, I found a guest who knows sports very well and provided him a platform. This is the second episode devoted to sports interest with a focus on American football. We will get back on more health topics next week, I promise. As for current events in the world, we will cover that in time as well. But for now, you can listen to the program following this broadcast, as I'm sure it is covering current events with fervor. Please let us know what topics you would like us to research. If we can find answers and perhaps some knowledgeable guests, we will make it happen. See you next week. This broadcast has been brought to you by several of my websites. First, we have an engineer's view at www.cosjwt.com. It's an engineer's approach to various problems of the day, as well as some tech topics. www.cosjwt.com. Then there's Ham Radio Magnum Experimentum. That is at www.hamradio.me. You'll find all sorts of topics for amateur radio with a specific focus on antenna technology. That is my career focus as an engineer. Let's go to ARLHS, Amateur Radio Lighthouse Society.com. It is an active organization promoting the activation and tracking of lights in amateur radio context. Please visit Amateur Radio Lighthouse Society. And finally, we have RF Analysis Services. It is my engineering consulting arm at www.rfanalysis.com. Please support these businesses as they support Transmitter 42 podcast. Thanks for listening to the Transmitter 42 podcast. If you would like to send us feedback or suggestions, please email us at radioshow@t42.am or send a note via U.S. mail to Transmitter 42 LLC, P.O. Box 100, Remington, Virginia 22734. All our podcasts are available for your favorite player. Visit t42.am for our catalog. Transmitter 42.